when it comes to weight loss, walking is by far the most underrated part of the weight loss process. And when I think about all the clients that I've coached, I can't think of a single client who has lost any significant amount of weight and kept it off, who didn't at least get to a point where they were very, very consistent with hitting a daily step goal or a weekly step goal. And so in this video, I'm gonna talk about the importance of this and actually how to do it, because I find that probably one of the biggest struggles that people run into is that we're all busy. We all have families, we have kids, we have church, we have all this stuff going on in our lives. And it's one thing to say, okay, I need to hit a daily step goal. I need to hit a weekly step goal so that I can burn a lot of calories and I can lose weight. It's a whole other thing to take that and to translate it into actually doing it consistently and seeing the results that you want to see on the scale when you combine that with the food that you're eating. So I'm gonna talk about everything from how much should you walk, how to consistently get that into an actual routine, some tips around making it feel easier so it doesn't feel like you're having to really push hard all the time to do it. And then also how to put yourself in a position where you can adapt when life gets a little bit crazy as well. As we dive in, the first thing that we've got to talk about is how much should we be walking and how are we going to track this? So generally speaking, I shoot for a goal with myself and with all of our clients at Healthy and Whole of about 8,000 to 10,000 steps per day. And then we break that into a week and we get around 56,000 to 70,000 steps per week. And we just want to make sure that we're tracking it. It doesn't matter if you have an Apple Watch, it doesn't matter if you have a Fitbit, if you have a Garmin, if you have a Samsung, it literally does not matter. But it does matter that you are using something to get an accurate gauge on how many steps are you walking on a daily basis. Because here's the thing, if you're not tracking that data, then you can't control that data. And as someone who's coached clients, hundreds of clients over the years, almost every time that I have a client who is struggling to see consistent weight loss on the scale, when I zero in and I look at what might be causing that, it boils down to one of two things. Either their steps are down and they're not consistently hitting their step goal, or their food has drifted and they're eating more food than they should be. And the first thing I look at is, are they tracking their steps and working on hitting that goal? So we've got to be tracking it, and we have to know what goal we're shooting for. Now that we've talked about that, let's get into the different types of steps and how to start building this into a routine. So first of all, there's incidental steps, and then there's intentional steps. Okay, incidental steps would be like just the normal daily steps that you get when you're just moving around doing normal daily things. You getting up in the morning, you put on your watch, you walk to the bathroom, you get dressed, you cook, you clean, you do your work, you go around, you make videos and move your hands around like this and you register a few extra steps. Those are incidental steps, okay? They're not intentionally walked steps where you're going out on a walk, but they are burning calories and they are a part of your daily step goal, and that's important. And then we have intentional steps, is where you're saying, okay, I'm going to get up from my desk, I'm going to go out and I'm going to walk for 10 minutes, for 20 minutes, for 30 minutes, whatever that's gonna be. And those are intentionally walked steps. Now, why is this important? Well, because everybody has typically has a certain amount of average steps that they get in the course of a day that we call incidental steps. So for me, I know that if I don't do any intentional walking, sorry, there's a fly buzzing around my head. If I don't do any intentional walking whatsoever, I typically will get somewhere between 2,500 and 4,000 steps a day, depending on how tied to my desk I am that day. So what that tells me is that if my goal is to hit 8,000 steps a day, which is the goal that I strive for most days, that I probably am going to need to intentionally walk somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 steps a day in order to just make sure that I'm gonna hit that 8,000 step goal most days, okay? So that's why we wanna have an idea of, okay, even if I'm not trying, how many average incidental steps do I get every day? And then now I know how many intentional steps that I need to go after. And a good way to gauge this from a time perspective is the average person walks around 1,000 steps in 10 minutes. So if I know that I have to get somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 intentionally walked steps on a daily basis, then I can easily translate that and say, okay, I typically am going to need somewhere between 40 minutes and 60 minutes of walking on a daily basis to close that gap to make sure that I hit my daily step goal, okay? So now that we know roughly how many incidental steps we have to get, we know how many intentional steps we have to get, we know what that gap is that we have to cover, now we can actually get into putting a plan in place and putting a routine in place that's going to let us to nail this goal. Now, when it comes to actually building a routine around walking, I think there are two ways that we can approach that. And it's not that you're always going to be using one or the other. These are actually like two different methods that you can turn to when you need each one. Method one would be going for longer walks. Maybe it's a 20-minute walk, a 30-minute walk, a 40-minute walk to get a lot of steps in at one time. The other way would be to break it into little bite-sized chunks several times throughout the day so that by the end of the day, it's all added up to get you to your goal. Now, the difference here would be there are going to be some times in your life where you can do and plan for taking longer walks. And I actually prefer to do that. I actually like to do that because then what I can do is I can front load my day and I can just go for like a 30-minute walk relatively early in my day. And then that means that if I get a 30-minute walk, that's roughly 3,000 steps combined with somewhere between 2,000 to 4,000 incidental steps. I'm already gonna be really kind of close and I'm gonna have a small gap I have to close later in the day. So I actually like long walks when I can fit those into my routine and my schedule. The other way to do it though, that is very helpful when you don't have the opportunity to do that is to break it up into bite-sized walking blocks. So let's say that I have a really busy schedule and I'm not going to be able to hit a 30-minute walk in the morning to get a big jump on my steps. Well, then what I'll do is I'll break it into 10 to 15-minute chunks. So I'll try to do a 10 to 15-minute walk early in the morning before my day really gets going. And then I'll usually try to do another 10 to 15-minute walk before or after lunch. And then I'll try to do another 10 to 15-minute walk, usually before or after dinner. And those 3 15-minute walks are going to get me really close to where I need to be to hit my goal when I combine that with my incidental steps for the day. And the nice thing about that is it doesn't feel as intrusive on my day. I can fit that in little nooks and crannies in my schedule between other things. It's a lot easier to just get up from my desk and take a 10-minute break and go walk for 10 minutes on my walking pad than it is to get up and take 30 to 40 minutes and go do a walk. So some days that is really, really helpful. So again, I like to think about this as having two different methods or two different tools in my toolkit for how I can approach. And I'm just looking at my schedule and kind of looking at my days and saying, okay, is today gonna be a day where I can get a long walk in and really front load my day? Or is today gonna be a day where I really need to break this into chunks? And I'm basically gonna do whatever I need to do to set myself up for success. So the next thing that I think that we really want to start to look at is how are we going to start finding or reclaiming the time that we need in our daily life in order to make this a consistent thing, right? How can I actually build a routine around walking that is going to allow me to know that I'm consistently going to hit this without really having to think about it too much? And I think this is just very personal. I think everybody has to look at their schedule. When I look at my schedule, I know that generally speaking, because of the way I've arranged my schedule and I work from home a lot, is that most days I can get up and I can afford to take a 30-minute walk in the morning. So if you look at my calendar, and maybe I'll throw up a screenshot here, if you look at my calendar, I actually have a block in my calendar most days to take a longer 30 to 45-minute walk in the morning. Or if my ankle's not acting up, I will run sometimes as well. And I think that's really helpful because I actually put that block into the calendar, and because I have that block in my calendar, no one else is going to take that block from me. It's protected, right? So you have to kind of look at your schedule and start saying, okay, well, based on my work schedule, you know, having to get the kids up and get them off to school and all the different things that you have going on, where can you look as your schedule is today, where and how could you fit walking into your schedule? Do you have the opportunity to get up a little bit earlier in the morning and to put a block into your calendar so that you could consistently get a really good jump on your steps every single day and not have to stress about it later on in the day? Or do you have so much going on that you're going to have to find some of these pockets, and maybe you could put shorter blocks into your calendar throughout the day to just get a few steps in here and a few steps in there. And then the other thing that I think is really important to start doing, because we are thinking long term, we're not just trying to do this in the short term, we're trying to build a lifestyle up around walking. So it's also, I think, important to start looking at and saying, where can I reclaim time that maybe at some point in time in my life, I devoted to other things, thinking that those things at the time were a priority, but maybe in my current season, they're not as much of a priority right now. And maybe I want to take back some time. Maybe I want to put some time boundaries in place. Maybe I want to step back from some other commitments and things so that I can reclaim some of that time. Maybe it's not even things that you've committed to, but maybe it's just doom scrolling and other low value habits that you might be getting sucked into, like sitting on the couch watching Netflix, doom scrolling on TikTok or Instagram. I think we all do that to some extent. And a lot of these are always going to be time that we could take back and put towards something like walking. And then the other question that you can ask yourself is, how can I start to multitask? Because when it comes to doom scrolling on TikTok or even watching Netflix, these days we all have cell phones, and we can actually watch our shows and we can actually scroll on TikTok while we're walking. So there's almost really no excuse for why doom scrolling or social media surfing or watching videos on YouTube or watching Netflix, why any of that should ever get in the way of hitting a daily step goal, because we can multitask and we can do these things all at the same time. So case in point, we want to start thinking about, okay, if I'm building a real lifestyle around this, what is that going to look like? What do I want that to look like? Where can I reclaim my time? Where can I put time into my calendar so that it has a place staked out for walking as a routine? And how can I kill two birds with one stone and multitask different things? Can I walk while I'm on certain Zoom calls or certain calls and things like that for meetings? Can I walk before or after lunch? There's so many different ways that you could multitask, but we just want to start thinking intentionally about that. The next thing that I want to talk about, now that we've kind of talked about building up a routine around it, is what do you do when life just kind of gets crazy, right? There's a lot of us have things that are always popping up on our schedule. People are asking us to do things for them. You know, we get asked to serve a church, different things like that that can happen. And you know, we're people who want to help. We want to serve. We want to be there for other people. So we want to say yes to a lot of these things, but we also want to make sure that we're being consistent with the things that are going to make us happy and healthy at the same time. So how do we juggle all that? How do we do it through the winter and the summer and the fall and all the different weather that we deal with as well? So let's start with weather, because I think that's the easiest one to do. And we just want to make sure that we have options for rain, cold, snow, all of that stuff, so that we can continue to hit our step goals on a consistent basis. So that's basically just, I think, making sure that whether you know, when it's 0 degrees outside, like it sometimes is here in the winter in Indiana, are you going to go to the gym to walk your steps? Are you going to go to another venue? Like we have a church around here called the Center, where they have a walking track that's open to the public. Are you going to go someplace like that and walk? Are you going to go to your local Lowe's or Walmart and just walk laps around the store? Are you going to go to the mall and just walk laps around the store? Or are you going to do like what I've done, which is where I've invested in a walking pad off of Amazon for like $300, and I just literally have it sitting in the back of my living room, right there where the couch and the kids' toys and the TV for the family is. And for me, that's my chosen avenue when it's raining or when I'm just really busy and I don't have time to go outside for a walk, or when it's 0 degrees outside, I turn to my walking pad. And so you want to start thinking to yourself, okay, what's my backup plan going to be when I either don't have time to go outside or the weather is crappy or whatever that's going to be? How am I going to still follow through to hit my walking goals on a daily basis? Because I want to make sure I'm hitting that so that I can have consistent results on the scale. So my top recommendation would be probably to buy a walking pad if you can afford that. If not, then at least have the venue that you're going to go to and know that you have that option available to you, and be committed to using whatever that backup plan is when you need it. The next thing I want to talk about is really about how to get really good at hitting the goal on a weekly basis, even if you miss it sometimes on a daily basis. So we have a daily step goal, and that's a good thing. It tells us what we need to strive for on a daily basis and where our effort needs to go. But sometimes life happens, and sometimes we just fall a little bit short of that goal. Sometimes, we sprain an ankle or something, an emergency comes up, and we're just not going to hit the daily effort that day. But that's why I like to think in terms of not just a daily goal, but a weekly goal. Okay, and so again, if we have a daily goal of 8,000 steps per day and we have a weekly goal of 56,000 steps per week, well then that gives us a little bit of flexibility to say, okay, if I fall behind today, that's okay, because I can still hit the total output of steps for the week. And we can actually think about steps and calories both in this way, right? We have a daily calorie goal, but we also add that all up into a calorie goal for the week. We have a daily step goal, and we can actually add all of that up to have a daily step goal or a step goal for the week. And at the end of the day, if you're hitting your weekly cumulative calorie goal and your weekly step cumulative goal, then those two things will come together in the right way to create long-term results. Even if they didn't fully match up on a daily basis, if your average for the week is where it needs to be, you're going to see results. So the way I think about this is a couple ways. Number one, I like to rely on what I call the 2-day rule. And that's actually not my rule. I didn't come up with it. I actually heard this from another YouTuber named Matt Diavella. This is a couple years ago I heard this. And the 2-day rule is essentially that if I miss my step goal today, that's okay. If I need to give myself grace today because life just blew up in my face, that's fine. But then tomorrow, no matter what, I'm gonna really push to make sure I hit that goal. And the 2-day rule is just really good. It gives me grace when I need it, but it also allows me to stay accountable to not letting one day falling off turn into 2 days, into 3 days, and into 4 days, and then I've totally missed my step goal for the whole week. So I like the 2-day rule as a way to just say, okay, today's effort didn't hit the mark, but tomorrow I'm definitely getting back on track, at least with my minimum step goal. And then the second point I like to make here when you think about weekly step goals is that we can actually just make up ground anywhere we need to, right? So if my goal is 8,000 steps and today blows up in my face and I only get 4,000 steps, well, that's okay. I still have 6 more days in the week that I can strive to make up that 4,000 that I missed today, right? So we can always make up ground if we need to. A lot of people, I think, get really kind of in their head, and there's a lot of mental, emotional anguish that goes around with, oh my gosh, my goal was 8,000 steps today and I didn't hit it. I only got 5,000 or I only got 6,000. And they really get down on themselves and they really beat themselves up. And that's why I like weekly goals too, is because it's like, hey man, the goal is really the week, the average for the week. So if we miss it today, no big deal. We have plenty of time to make that up. We can be diligent about making up that ground if we need to. And then the third thing here is just try to be proactive, right? If you know your daily schedule for the most part, try to kind of get in the groove of understanding and knowing, okay, on these days of the week, I'm probably gonna be able to go out and do these longer walks in the morning to really get ahead of my steps. But on these busier days, I'm probably gonna need to fit more of these smaller bite-sized walks in. And be proactive in anticipating these things so that you kind of have a plan and you can get into a groove of being more successful more consistently and not getting kind of to a place where it's day 4 or day 5 in the week and you have so many steps to make up that it would be not impossible, but really, really hard to catch up to hit your weekly goal, okay? Just a few tips there to help you to not put so much emphasis on the day. The daily effort is really important, but it's really the rolling 7-day average that we're after, okay? And then lastly, there are also going to be times where either just for one day or even for a season where you're not able to hit the step goal that you want to because of other reasons. Maybe you are really sick. Maybe you did sprain your ankle or have a knee injury. Maybe you just had surgery. Maybe you are flying, or maybe you're stuck at a conference and you're just not able to walk very much. There are a lot of different things that could be happening that could make it so that it's very difficult for you to hit your daily step goal for a day or for a week or for a month or a season. And so what do we do in those moments? A lot of people, the first place their mind goes is, well, crap, this sucks. I sprained my ankle, so I might as well just throw all caution to the wind, and this is where it all ends. And they start sabotaging themselves with food and cheating on their food too, because they're missing one goal, might as well just miss them all. And I really want to encourage you to not do that. I want to encourage you to understand that when it comes to maintaining a calorie deficit, we can also make adjustments here. So let's say that your goal is 8,000 steps a day, and for whatever reason, your ankles bum or whatever it is, you're just probably only going to be able to average 4,000 steps a day or 6,000 steps a day. That's okay, right? What we could do instead is we could reduce a little bit on the food intake side of things to sort of counteract that loss of daily calories burned, to still try to maintain a calorie deficit, or at least as close to maintenance so we're not gaining weight back as we can. We do still have to pay attention to how much protein we're getting on a daily basis. So if you're reducing food intake because you are being very inactive, then what I would recommend is predominantly to try to focus on lean proteins and non-starchy vegetables in your meals for the most part, and try to avoid eating much in the way of high carbohydrate or high fat foods. And the reason for that is not because carbs are bad or because fats are bad, but carbohydrate and fat are both used for fueling activity. And particularly carbohydrates are used for fueling more intense activity. And so if we're laid out with a bum knee or an ankle, or we're sick, or we just had surgery, or whatever the reason is, we're just not moving very much, our need for that external fuel really goes way down. And we need protein to keep up with bodily processes and maintain muscle mass. And non-starchy vegetables give us nutrients and things like that we need, but we don't need a ton of carbohydrate, and we don't need very much fat either. So on those days where you're just not moving very much, try to just stick to mainly lean protein sources and non-starchy vegetables. Maybe even skip a meal, skip a snack, something like that, but just try to lower your calorie intake by reducing carbohydrate and fat intake. That'll preserve protein intake, preserve muscle mass. Protein and non-starchy vegetables are still very filling. So you're still gonna be in a really good position there. It's just that you're going to successfully lower your calorie intake since your calorie output is down. So guys, that's it for this video. Just a lot of tips around how to actually go from, okay, I'm really struggling to be consistent with this, and now it's actually something I can be consistent. Rain, cold, shine, injured, sick, whatever it is, you can be successful with that. If you found this valuable, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, all that good stuff. I'm trying to really push myself to put out a video every day, at least 4 or 5 days a week, just to get out of the perfectionist mindset that I tend to be in. So that's why these videos are a lot less edited. I say, I don't cut out and redo everything when I make a word flub or something like that. I'm just trying to be as me as possible and as raw as possible, but still convey the information that I think you guys really need and hopefully want to hear. So if you guys enjoyed this, please give me a comment down below. Let me know that you like this style of video and that this was valuable for you, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.